Welcome to Baptist for Liberty. I'm your host, Joanna Works.
And Andrew Sullivan.
And today we are going to be discussing mascots, in particular the very controversial Redskins and other sporting mascots that uses the images of Native Americans. I think this fits into our main theme because we've been talking about idols and icons, and mascots are icons. When we first started the podcast, I wanted to do some stuff, a little lighter things on entertainment and politics, not just on politics, but entertainment. And sports is a big thing that can be as heated discussion as politics. So mascots, they're an icon, so they fit our theme, and also this is a controversy that crosses both the athletic world and the world of politics. Do you have any thoughts you want to add to that, Andrew?
No, I agree. The sports industry is very big. With ESPN, Yahoo News, Fox, whatever, sports centers. When a lot of people think of the American identity or identifying with America, sports is one of the biggest things that come up. So I think it's definitely important and a good topic to talk about.
Okay. We have quite a few articles we want to get through today, and maybe won't be able to cover this whole subject this week. But I'll read this first article here. It's at the Huffington Post, and it's 8 schools that have dropped the Redskins name Washington's NFL team still won't change. And this was posted August 3rd, so the start of this week. And it has some opening paragraphs, and then it goes through and talks about these 8 particular schools. And I thought the quotes that they give for these, that they highlighted, were really interesting. Cooperstown Central High School, Cooperstown, New York. These wonderful kids have done such an inclusive, respectful, and thoughtful thing. In many ways, Cooperstown helped spark a new drive against Redskins mascots when a student-led movement pushed the school to change its nickname in 2013. That decision convinced the Oneida Indian Nation of New York to help start the Change the Mascot campaign against Washington's team. They're showing much more thoughtful and respectful initiatives than many of these wealthy Major League team owners. Ray Halbert, the Oneida representative who has emerged as a prominent critic of the Washington team, told USA Today. These wonderful kids have done such an inclusive, respectful, and thoughtful thing. So I thought this was really interesting, especially that these kids, in their high school decided that they wanted to make this change. So they switched from being the Redskins to the Hawkeyes.
Interesting tactic to do.
Yeah. Port Townsend High School. This is in Washington State. Now we're Red Hawks, and we're liking it. School board officials at Washington State's Port Townsend High School voted unanimously to retire the school's Redskins nickname in 2013, a year after the State Board of Education recommended the elimination of such mascots. The name had been divisive for 3 decades, the district superintendent said at the time. But a year after the controversial change, the students seemed to have moved on. Now we're the Red Hawks, and we're liking it, a Port Townsend football player said before the school began its first season with a new name. And I think one of the things that bothers me about this is the whole concept about Redskin is Redskin is a derogatory racial slur. And so it's good to switch over. I mean, some of these other names that relate to a particular tribe or chiefs or braves or something like that, some people might argue about whether it honors Native Americans or not. But the name Redskins is definitely a racial slur, so there really shouldn't be a controversy. So I think it's really neat to see these high schools making these changes, especially when the students are part of making those changes.
Oh, absolutely. The biggest change in a school is the students.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that the NFL still has the Redskins.
I know, and especially when you're talking about sports being so American, there's no more American sport than football. I mean, some people might say baseball, but football is really the American sport. In other countries, when they say football, we call that soccer, but American football is really, America's sport, so it is shocking, and especially since it's in Washington, D.C., our capital. And we'll bring that out in one of the other articles that we're going to read. But this one right here that goes through these different high schools, different states. Two of the high schools that they list are actually in Oklahoma. This next one's in Texas. And they just changed their team's name from Redskin to the Texans. In Oklahoma, Capitol Hill High School, Oklahoma City. The school in Oklahoma City decided to choose a new mascot in December 2014 after using Redskins for 88 years. There was no real reason not to do the right thing, the local superintendent said. Students protested the decision, but Capitol Hill saw less controversy over the change than some other schools did, local officials said. I was actually surprised about how well received it was. I thought that I would have to do more education on our end to let them learn about the word. Star Yellowfish, the local administrator for American Indian Student Services, said at the time, but they got it. They got it, and they care about our kids. And I think it's interesting, some of these, when they listed how long they've had these names, this school was 88 years, another school was 90 years. Let's see. Which one was 90 years? I think maybe it's one a little later that was 90 years. But, and those dates, they made me interested in when and why our schools started using this racial slur in particular for team athletics and such. I wasn't able to find that yet, so if we don't get through this today, then maybe we'll pick it up another time and get more into the history. But that's going to require a little more digging on my part. There was another school in New York, Lancaster Central High School. Lancaster Central High School in upstate New York decided to change its Redskins nickname in March of this year after multiple schools canceled lacrosse matches against Lancaster to protect its mascot. Though students pushed back against the change, the school board offered a simple reason for it. The name of a school mascot should not be offensive to anyone, a board member said before the final vote. Even as these schools have changed their mascots, others like Wilpinit High School in Washington State have reaffirmed their support for the name. But these 8 could soon have more company. Goshen's decision has led to similar discussions around the Redskins mascot at Northside High School in Fort Wayne, Indiana. In June, the California State Assembly approved legislation that would ban schools from using Redskins as a nickname. The state Senate is expected to vote on the bill in August. If it passes and Governor Jerry Brown signs it, as he is expected to do, 4 schools in the state would have to choose new names. And in Oregon, as many as 14 schools may be forced to change their mascots after state officials in May upheld a ban on Native American nicknames first passed in 2012. None of the 14, however, use Redskins. Washington's NFL team, meanwhile, is currently appealing a judge's decision that invalidated 6 of its federal trademark protections on the grounds that the name was disparaging.
What? that last sentence. I mean, really?
Yeah, there's been the NFL, the Washington's team has had several lawsuits over their name, and they've actually lost a few cases, but then they appealed and were able to keep their name after all. So this has been a really long, ongoing fight between different Native American groups and Washington, D.C.'s team. And I was actually surprised when I was reading some of these articles that in the federal trademark protections, there are regulations about disparaging names. So, like, racial slurs are not supposed to be trademarked for products or businesses or such.
Yet, Washington still has the Redskins.
Exactly. And I think some people don't understand that Redskins is a racial slur. I mean, but it's no different from using the N-word.
I agree, right? It just baffles me, and I'm kind of speechless that even though that they have these regulations and trying to be all-inclusive and not trying to have bad names against anyone, that this is still an ongoing thing.
Right. And that brings us to our second link, because when I was reading this first article, and there was 2 schools. One school mentioned had their mascot for 90 years. Oh, here it is. It's at the very top of the article. I skipped part of the introduction to it. But a high school in Goshen, Indiana, had changed their name from Redskins. It was a school board decision, 5-2. And they had their name for 90 years. So this is a long history. And so I understand there's that attachment to this icon, to this image, to the name. And I was interested in why, though, these schools originally decided to become attached to these names and icons. That I wasn't able to find a history on it yet, but I did find instead this website about the fight to change the names, and it gives a chronological order, 35 years of efforts addressing the use of American Indian related sports team mascots. And so in 1968, the National Congress of American Indians, initialized NCAI, launched his campaign to address stereotypes found in print and other media. And this is an important thing. Even if you're not using the racial slur, most of the images that are used for these mascots and the costumes for the mascots are part of racial stereotypes that are not positive. They're not kind to the Native Americans or accurate. They're cartoon characters. And anyway, another page on this website also has psychological aspects. So it details some of the psychological study of these mascots on Native American people and how it causes young people to view themselves because they see all these stereotypes of their people.
From a psychological perspective, that makes a lot of sense. These kids are being raised with these names, and they're just like surrounded by it, and then they're just kind of raised knowing them, and then they conform to this so-called identity that is a complete stereotype.
Right, and it makes me sad because I think it gives them another sense of reminder of a helplessness because they are a minority, because if you can't affect a change like a mascot or something, how are you ever going to break these stereotypes that other people have of you? And it reinforces negative things that they hear about their own people, and what else are you supposed to do but internalize that? And this goes for, any stereotype. But I don't know, it just amazes me that Native Americans, they were here first and they're still fighting to be recognized as people, not characters.
Right.
So I don't know if I'll read through this whole timeline, probably not, but it gives a chronological order of different groups and schools from all the way from 1968 up to 2004, so this website needs some updating.
But this goes till 2004.
Yeah. So, but we'll give this link to this on our show notes so that, if you want to look at it, and they have other things on this website. They have action alerts, archives, educators' resources, getting involved, related links, the psychological aspects of this. And we talked a little bit I guess it was a couple of weeks ago when we talked about identity. And so again, this touches how icons and images affect our identity. And I really want to understand why sports even took on these mascot names and images, because it's not really honoring of the Native Americans. And if you did genuinely wanted to honor them, why wouldn't you listen to them when they say that this is racist, this is offensive?
That's a really good question.
So then our next one, and I think I probably will read most of this article. This is from CNN. Now, it was written in April of 2013, so it's a little older. But I think it still gets to the heart of the issue here. The title of this article is Native American Mascots, Pride or Prejudice? And this is written by CNN reporter Moni Basu. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Monibasu. Susan Sean Harrow remembers when she walked into a store with her grandfather in El Reno, Oklahoma. She wanted to get something cool to drink on a summer day. It was the early 1950s, and the storekeepers told the 6-year-old she had to leave. No black Redskins in here, they said. At that moment, Harrow felt small, unsafe, afraid. Because she was a dark-skinned Native American, Cheyenne, and Hodolgi Muskogee, she was being identified by just her coloring. She wasn't even a whole human being. Not even her grandpa, whom she saw as all-powerful, could do anything to protect her. Later in her life, that incident made her angry enough for Haro to launch a lifelong mission to protect her people. Part of her work took aim at sporting teams that used Native Americans as mascots. With the start of the baseball season this week, some of those teams have been front and center. The Cleveland Indians, for instance, feature a smiling Indian dubbed Chief Wahoo, criticized by Native Americans as a racist character. The most offensive example of a mascot, says Haro, is the one used by Washington's football team. She has been fighting for years to get the Redskins to change their names. The R word, she can't even bring herself to say it, is the same as the N word, says Haro, president of Morningstar Institute, a national Native American rights organization. She finds it unbelievable that more than half a century after she was told to get out of that El Reno store, after decades of civil rights struggles and progress on race relations, Americans have no problem with rooting for a team called the Redskins. Fans say the name is an honorific, but the Merriam-Webster dictionary says this: the word redskin is very offensive and should be avoided, and to many Native Americans nothing could be more derogatory than the use of that word. The Washington team, it's the king of the mountain, Haro says. When this one goes, others will. The controversy over Native American names in sports is long-standing and surfaces in headlines now and then, as it did in December when the Atlanta Braves baseball team was reportedly considering bringing back a dated Screaming Indian logo for batting practice caps. Or when Amanda Blackhorse, a 31-year-old Navajo social worker, went to Washington last month to attend a hearing of the Trademark Trial and Appeal Board. She has petitioned to cancel the Redskins trademark on grounds that the name is racist. Haro filed a similar petition in 1992 and won, but she later lost in the appeals process. So this is, we were talking a little bit about the trademark fight. They've lost it and then they re-won it in the appeals court. Haro was defeated in the courts, but public opinion has been shifting steadily on the matter. In March, several lawmakers introduced a bill in Congress that would amend the Trademark Act of 1946 to ban the term redskin in a mark because it is disparaging of Native people. Among the sponsors of the bill is civil rights activist Rep. John Lewis, Georgia. Haro says she hopes the legislation will accomplish what litigation has failed to do so far. If passed, the bill will force the Washington football team to discard its trademark name and ban the use of any offensive term in any future trademarks. Proponents believe that Native American mascots pay homage to the people and help promote a better understanding of those who dominated America before Europeans landed. But opponents say the mascots perpetuate stereotypes that are void of context and history. They argue that even if the mascots themselves are not racially insensitive, they portray Native people as one-dimensional. A good many Americans don't know any Indians, says Kevin Gover, who heads the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of the American Indian. The Indian you see most often in Washington, D.C. is at a football game. At the expense of real Indians, real history, real culture, the petty stereotype has become expected. In February, the Smithsonian Museum hosted a symposium on racist stereotypes and cultural appropriation in American sports. The idea was to make people think about how these stereotypes can be damaging to Indians. Kids grow up and think it's okay, Gover says. It's not okay. There used to be more than 3,000 teams with Native American names and mascots. That's down to about 900 now, but that's still 900 too many for Gover. He grew up also in Oklahoma and recalled how the University of Oklahoma became the first collegiate team to drop its unofficial mascot, Little Red, a student who dressed as an Indian chief and danced on the sidelines during football games. Protests on campus forced the demise of Little Red. In 2005, Oklahoma adopted two costumed horses, Boomer and Sooner, as mascots who represented the real horses that pulled the Sooner schooner, but many students didn't take to them. One of them was Royce Young, who wrote about the university's mascot crisis, in quotation marks, in an online forum in 2007. But why can't OU bring back Little Red? Oklahoma prides itself on being Native American. American Indian heritage is something that is more prevalent in this state than any other in the nation. Would it be so wrong to have Native American imagery representing Native America? Young, 27, and a writer for CBS Sports, said he now believes he would have written a more educated post after having discussed the mascot issue with Native Americans. I wouldn't say regret writing it, he said, but I'd be much more sensitive of understanding why Little Red was insensitive to some instead of saying, what's the big deal? Roy said he saw nothing wrong with Oklahoma honoring its native people, but not with tasteless mascots. Several college teams followed Oklahoma's footsteps and dropped Native American mascots, Stanford and Syracuse among them. The movement to do away with Indian mascots gained momentum after the American Psychological Association in 2005 called for the immediate retirement of the mascots based on studies that show the harmful effects of inaccurate racial portrayals. And again, this has a link as well to that particular study that they're referencing. The following year, the NCAA, the governing body of college sports, adopted a policy banning teams with hostile or abusive racial, ethnic, national origin mascots, nicknames, or imagery from competition. The ban affected high-powered football schools such as Florida State University with Chief Osceola and the University of Illinois, whose official symbol was Chief Illinois. Sorry, I can't pronounce these names.
I think it's Illini.
Okay.
Because it's fighting Illini.
I was hoping you would know, being from Illinois.
Yeah, I think it's Illini.
Okay. Some states have put the morality of the Indian mascots up for vote. Last year, voters dumped the University of North Dakota's Fighting Sioux mascot, and Oregon prohibited public schools from the use of Native American names, symbols, or images. The names on the ban list include Redskins, Savages, Indians, Indianettes, Chiefs, and Braves. At Florida State University, a white man dresses up as Chief Osceola, smears war paint on his face, and rides an Appaloosa called Renegade to the middle of Doak Campbell Stadium. He plants a burning spear on the field before every home game. The marching band plays Indian-themed music, and the crowd goes wild doing the tomahawk chop, a move picked up by the Atlanta Braves. FSU student Lincoln Golick, who played Osceola in 2002, told the Florida State Times back then that it was a tremendous honor to have so many admiring fans. The Seminole tribe in Florida made an agreement with FSU to allow the use of its name that allows the university to continue competing in the NCAA. The university says its relationship with the Seminole tribe is one of the mutual respect. So this is interesting because they actually picked a historical figure's name, and they actually have good relationships with the Native American tribe there that shares that heritage in Florida. So I think this is one example where maybe some people who don't want any Native American names still find it offensive, but in this case, at least the tribe that's directly affected with this they have one of mutual respect. So I think that's a positive. We don't necessarily have to be hardliners. Their name isn't one of a racial derogatory, but of history.
Right. I mean, the Washington Redskins is obviously derogatory. That doesn't seem derogatory to me.
Right. And I think, and there's a couple of different extremes, because there were some people earlier in the article that didn't think any Native American type of mascots or names should be used. But this was a good example, a positive one, that has history. And the next paragraph tells us who this chief was. He fought U.S. soldiers in the Seminole Wars. He was captured in 1837 under a flag of truce and died in prison. Before his burial, the soldiers chopped off the head of the Indian warrior to keep as a trophy. That Osceola serves as a mascot at FSU doesn't sit well with the Seminoles in Oklahoma and many other Native Americans. Native Americans feel offended. They feel hurt. They feel their identity is being trivialized, says Carol Spindle, who wrote Dancing at Halftime, a book that explored Native mascots. This is such an ingrained part of American culture that it's very hard to get people to question it, says Spindle, a professor at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, where the official symbol used to be Chief Illiniwek. He was the subject of debate for decades and made his last appearance in 2007 under the threat of NCAA sanctions. But 5 years later, there are still some who want Illiniwek back. A non-binding student referendum held just weeks ago strongly favored making him the official mascot again. Spindle concluded in her book that mascots such as Chief Illiniwek were a reflection not of Native people, but of those who invented them. If we do a census of the population in our collective imagination, imaginary Indians are one of the largest demographic groups, Spindle writes in her book. They dance, they drum, they go on the warpath, they are always young men who wear trailing feather bonnets. Symbolic servants, they serve as mascots and metaphors. We rely on these images to anchor us to the land and verify our account of our own past. But as these Indians exist only in our own imaginations, they provide a solipsistic connection and leave us, ultimately, untethered and rootless. At 67, Haro believes she has made strides. Sorry, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay, sorry. At 67, Haro believes she has made strides in her struggle to do away with racial stereotypes, but says Native Americans have a long way to go. Because we as Indians, we don't have the numbers, she says, referring to the dwindling population. The latest census listed 2.9 million people as American Indian and Alaska Native, so we don't pose a threat, she says. If we organized a march, the numbers would be so small. We've done it school by school, state by state. Haro knows if the powerful Washington football team is forced to discard its name, then everyone else will follow. But for now, she takes pride in small victories. Just a few weeks ago, a high school in Cooperstown, New York, decided to retire its R-word mascot. And this is one of the schools listed in the first article we read. C.J. Herbert, superintendent for the Cooperstown Central School District, said students approached him regarding their discomfort with the mascot that had been around for decades. I do think that times change and perspectives change, and certainly it's historically a time for us to reconsider what the name is, Herbert said. That's a statement that makes Haro feel her campaign has been worthwhile. Did you have any comments on this before we go to our next one?
they incorporated the Illinois stuff and compared the two.
Right. And like I said, there's some that are hardliners and they don't like even the ones that reference particular chiefs. And I don't know how historically accurate this chief is, but it says that the Seminole tribe, the nation that's actually in Florida, they don't have a problem with it, though other Seminoles, like in Oklahoma or other states, are more offended by it. So that might be a difference in perspective of history because of those who were moved to the reservations in Oklahoma or such. I don't know all the details on that. But I thought it was good that they did give a couple different perspectives on this.
So I actually Googled that Chief Illinois, and a little blurb about it on Wikipedia.
Okay.
And I guess I'm going to read a little bit of that.
Yeah, go ahead.
It says, Chief Illinois, also referred to as the Chief, was until 2007 the official mascot of University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, which is the main University of Illinois. The mascot was typically portrayed as a student dressed in Sayax regalia. Several groups protested that the use of a Native American figure in indigenous customs in such a manner was inappropriate and promoted ethnic stereotypes. The protesting organizations include the Native American House, the AIS program, the Native American Student Organization, and the NAACP, among other various organizations. And it says, in August of 2005, the National Collegiate Athletic Association expressed disapproval of the university's use of a hostile or abusive image as its mascot. While initially proposing a consensus approach to the decision about the mascot, the board in 2007 decided that the mascot, its name, image, and regalia should officially be retired. Nonetheless, the controversy continued on campus, with some students unofficially maintaining the mascot. Complaints continue that indigenous students feel insulted when images of the chief continue to be present on campus.
I'm sorry, that last part got a little staticky. Can you repeat that?
The last sentence, or?
Yeah, just the last sentence.
Okay. It says, nevertheless, the controversy continued on campus, with some students unofficially maintaining the mascot. Complaints continued that indigenous students feel insulted when images of the chief continue to be present on campus.
Okay. Yeah, and especially if they know what their history is and the inaccuracy of it, and I don't know, why insist that something's honoring someone when the people of that group say, no, it doesn't honor us? You can't honor somebody by doing something that they repeatedly tell you is insulting.
Right. I don't know why they would continue. Doesn't make sense to me.
If you go to nativenewsonline.net, it's just what it sounds like. It's various news stories related to Native American people. And actually they also have articles news stories regarding people from around the world of Native groups. So Canada, Australia, and parts of Asia. But anyway, if you go to that website and they have their search bar, and you put in Mascots, they have tons and tons of stories related to this subject if you want to do more research and reading from a Native American perspective. A lot of these articles that we've read and looked at so far, they're a little more mainstream articles and websites. So that's just one resource. I think it's good if you want to dig a little more into this. We don't have a lot of time left, but there was one more article I wanted to look at. This is also from the Huffington Post. So we started with the Huffington Post, and we're going to close with the Huffington Post. It just kind of worked out this way. But this was published July 30th, so this is also more recent. And this is written by Julian Brave Noisecat. So he's a Native American writer here with the Huffington Post. And it's 13 issues facing Native American people beyond mascots and casinos. Most of the recent headlines about Indigenous Americans have had to do with a certain DC football team, or a surprisingly dumb Adam Sandler movie, or casinos of the kind operated by the fictional Ukiah tribe on House of Cards. And we're not saying these issues don't matter, but beyond the slot machines, the movie sets, the football fields, there are other problems facing Native American communities. Insidious, systematic, life-or-death problems, the kinds of problems it takes years and votes and marches to resolve, that aren't getting nearly as much attention. There are 567 tribes, including 229 Alaska Native communities, currently recognized by the federal government. The Bureau of Indian Affairs, the primary federal agency in charge of relations with indigenous communities, is also considering extending federal status to Native Hawaiians. Each of the federally recognized tribes is a nation unto itself, sovereign, self-determined, and self-governing, that maintains a government-to-government relationship with the United States. In addition, the rights of all indigenous peoples, including Native Hawaiians, have been affirmed in a 2007 United Nations Declaration. Each indigenous nation has a distinct history, language, and culture. While many face concerns that are specific to their government, state, or region, there are certain issues that affect all Native communities throughout the United States, from Hawaii to Maine and Alaska to Florida. Here are 13 such issues that you probably aren't hearing enough about. I thought that was very interesting that he gives the numbers and some information on the politics and a little history here. His first one is Native Americans face issues of mass incarceration and policing. Thanks in large part to the Black Lives Matter movement, which has insisted that demands for justice and equality for the black community remain part of the national conversation, there is now growing momentum to address the issues of policing and mass incarceration. But while the brutalization of black Americans at the hands of police and their maltreatment within the criminal justice system have garnered national headlines, similar injustices against Native Americans have gone largely unreported. And he continues with quite a few paragraphs on that and information on that. And this is something, again, you can read more in this article, and we'll have it posted. You can go to nativenewsonline.net and look that up, and they cover multiple cases involving people, Native American people, who feel like they've been targeted because of their ethnicity. Another one here is Native communities are often impoverished and jobless. Native people suffer from high rates of poverty and unemployment. 17% of Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders and 27% of all self-identified Native Americans and Alaska Natives live in poverty, according to U.S. Census Bureau data. However, the national figure distorts the prevalence of poverty in Indian reservations and in Alaska Native communities where 22% of Native people live. In 2012, 3 of the 5 poorest counties in the U.S. and 5 of the top 10 encompass Sioux reservations in North and South Dakota. Last year, President Barack Obama visited the Standing Rock Sioux on the border of North and South Dakota, where the poverty rate is 43.2%, almost 3 times the national average. The unemployment rate on the Standing Rock Reservation was over 60% as of 2014. Now, there's probably a lot of contributing factors to this, probably related to reservations and how they work, and that is a huge topic in of itself that we couldn't begin to cover right now. But yeah, he lists 13 different things, and that's just the first 2. And like he said, it's not like the Mascots issue doesn't matter, but there's a lot of different things facing Native Americans that don't get as much attention, and I think the Mascot issue gets more attention because it is sports, and the movies gets more attention because it is movies. These are things that mainstream America care a little more about, so those are stories that's gonna get our attention a little bit more.
That's true. I mean, these things, U.S. Census data, all of that stuff, it's important, but I mean, a lot of Americans aren't really going to be looking for that data.
Right. But you know, these are our neighbors. I mean, as much as the Samaritan was the neighbor to the Jewish man in the parable, you know, the Native Americans, they're our neighbors. We need to care more about them as people. Whether it's using racial slurs or iconic imagery that is racial stereotypes, you know. And if somebody tells you, like, honestly, if you were friends with somebody and they said something was insulting to them, you wouldn't insist, oh no, you shouldn't feel insulted by that. Like, seriously? That mindset just kind of boggles me.
Unfortunately, some people are raised and taught that. Like going with the Washington stuff, I mean, as people have been raised knowing that it's their name and going through the motions of all that, and they just don't think about it.
Yeah. Well, we've done a lot of reading and not a lot of conversation in this podcast. It's just about time to wrap it up, though. I do want to apologize that we weren't on air last week. We were going to do an episode, and then, well, just between scheduling and illnesses and things, I wasn't feeling good one night, and the next night we were going to try to record it. I don't think you were feeling very well, and we were both very underprepared, because me being sick the previous night, I just didn't have time to prepare for it. So we try to be more prepared.
Our listeners are probably tired of hearing us. I'm kidding.
I hope not.
Speaking of listeners, if you have any comments about any of our podcasts, leave us a message, and we would love to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we try to leave communications open. You can leave comments for us. Let's see, on our Facebook page, we have comment box on our website, so you can leave a comment there. Also, I know I've been behind. I've uploaded the episodes on Saturdays to our SoundCloud, but I've been behind on uploading them to the YouTube, and it's usually the YouTube that I post the website, so the website archive is getting updated. By the time you're listening to this, it should already be updated, because I'm updating it on Monday. So, yeah, that won't be behind anymore. But we do, even if you don't see an episode posted on a website, we did post it on our Facebook page. We did post it on SoundCloud every Saturday, except for last Saturday.
And if you can't find it either way, let us know.
Yeah, if you're having problems finding it or playing it, I've noticed sometimes when I post the link on SoundCloud, it doesn't give the episode name like it's supposed to. It just gives like SoundCloud's generic little icon, and it's supposed to say the episode name on there, so that's a little frustrating. I don't know why it does that, like the last couple of times I've posted episodes. So, there's still little technical problems we're working on. Okay, so do you have any last comments before our Bible verse?
Well, obviously we're going to be continuing this topic for next week's podcast.
Probably, yeah. I'll see about doing some more history and covering it in that way. And maybe we'll tie it in with find some more scripture maybe too to go along with this.
Okay.
The Bible does talk about general principles, I think, on how we're supposed to treat one another. So we'll see what I can find on that.
That'll certainly be interesting.
Maybe I'll make you do the Bible research.
Good.
Yeah.
I don't mind.
You're doing your minor in theology, so I think I should make you do it.
I am.
Okay, so go ahead and close us out with our Bible verse for this week.
So this week's Bible verse, it can be found in both Luke and Matthew, but I'm going to choose to use Luke's version. It's both the same. But Luke 16:13. No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. He cannot serve God and mammon.